today we're going to be looking at system software. Now, before we do that, let's take a look at how computers are used to look. So you can see from this image, the programmers are flicking switches, they're pushing buttons. There is no interface as such. Now, this was fine for them because they're experts in their field. Less useful if you want to mass produce computers that everyone can use. So operating systems were developed so initially programmers could focus on the task and spend less time worrying about hardware. This was obviously then developed into what we now know as multitasking operating systems that allow us to have a spreadsheet open at the same time as a web browser whilst running antivirus in the background. So if we were to look at this visually, the operating system is a piece of software that is the middle ground between us as the user and the actual hardware. So when we press a button or type a character or press save, whatever it is, rather than us directly interacting with the hardware like this, the operating system deals with it for us and identifies where to save it to on the disk or where to load something from. So before we go any further, let's have a bit of clarification on a few key terms. So in terms of software, there's two main types that we look at. And yes, there's others that we look at over the course of the GCSE, but mainly they will come under these headings. So application software allows us to complete a task. For example, write a letter, write an email, produce a leaflet for a party, that kind of thing. And often that will be through a graphical user interface, which uses buttons and menus and that kind of thing. System software, which is what we're going to be looking at this unit, is designed to run and maintain our computer system. And we'll look at some ways that that happens now. So, the operating system, its main responsibility, under a big umbrella term, is to manage hardware and run software. Now, in one sentence, we've given the operating system quite a lot to do there. So let's break that down a bit further. It communicates with hardware via device drivers. Now, if you think about all the different companies that produce printers or scanners or cameras or graphics cards, there's no way we can expect to plug in a piece of hardware from a company and our computer just to go, oh yeah, I know what to do with that. So the way we get around this is with device drivers, and they act as almost a translator between the piece of hardware that you've connected to your computer and the computer itself. They also provide a user interface like the one I'm using now. I've got buttons at the top, I've got menus, I've got the pointer to allow me to click on particular things, I can scroll. That is provided by the operating system. It allows the computer to multitask, and we've already said this. I have got File Explorer and 2 PowerPoints open. Now, I could also have a spreadsheet, my class registers, a few other things, and the operating system would be responsible for managing the use of those different pieces of software. It also deals with our file and disk management, so where things get saved, how we organise things to make our life easier. And then lastly, as far as we're concerned at GCSE, it allows us to manage system security and user accounts. So making sure that only students can access student shared area and staff can access staff area. Putting a pin on your phone so only you can open it, that kind of thing. So we've gone from saying operating systems manage hardware and run software to breaking it down to these 5 areas. Let's look at each of those in a little more detail now. So we've talked about device drivers. Now they allow the operating system to communicate with any hardware that is connected to that computer. And they work in the following way. Any piece of hardware that's connected to a computer requires a device driver. Now, in the olden days, the piece of hardware would come with a CD-ROM that you would install yourself. Okay, now what that allows is when you turn the computer on, the operating system will search for hardware, it'll identify any hardware that's plugged into your computer, and then it will run the correct drivers. Now, in the olden days, once you'd installed your disk and the device driver was there, that was done. Now, the beauty of tech developments and the internet means that actually, if a company improves the performance of a printer or another piece of hardware, you can download improvements through new releases to your device driver, or if there was something that wasn't working. So updates to device drivers can now be released. Moving on then to interfaces, this is the one that we as users are most familiar with, a graphical user interface, or a GUI. Now, they've been designed for novices, so they are visual and they are intuitive. They should allow you to kind of work out what to do. Now, if we think about the Microsoft Office package, it always looks the same. The save button is always there. The menus are always here. They're similar. The layout's the same. So if you know how to use one, you know how to use the others. That's what we mean by intuitive. And it's been optimized for use of mouse and touchscreen. Okay, so there's windows and icons, menus and pointers, otherwise known as WIMP. Now, again, with the advancements of technology, there is more use of touchscreen, particularly in handheld devices. Now, prior to GUIs, our first kind of user interface was command line, and this is still used by a lot of individuals, and we'll talk about why now. So it's different to GUI in that you enter the commands as a user. You type the code. There is no button to select if you want to load a particular menu or save. The benefit of this is they use less resources. Now, what I mean by that is you are taking up less space in RAM because you haven't got to have all the icons loaded and that kind of thing. They also give a user far more control. So you could decide where you want to save something, or you can specify how exactly you want something to occur. So for people who are able to use them, who understand the code, they are far more efficient and powerful. I'm going to stop the video here with a few questions for you to do. Have a go at those. Make sure you've filled your book in, and I will see you in the next video.